Yeah, after the previous talk, I have so many jokes, I don't know which one to start with. My name is Dmitry, not that Dmitry. Yeah, you could check the website, so it's all clear. So my topic today is delivery pipelines for Windows machine. I've added for fun and profit, just to explain why I'm doing it. And so my other submission was about Kubernetes, but it wasn't accepted. But anyways, so what I do every day in the last year is mostly consulting and development on different types of projects. I am historically a Java developer with web development background, not JavaScript, and doing some architecture stuff. But also DevOps and test automations are topics which fascinate me and which I think I know a lot. And I help companies which are in different situations. For example, someone wrote a framework and left, and so then I come and migrate them to standard solutions from open source and stuff. And so the topic is about continuous delivery. So I guess here we all have DevOps specialists. Actually, I don't know most of you. And so what's continuous delivery is my definition of it: getting a change to production in the most efficient way and quickly, and preferably automated. And that's your job to do it. So why do we need to get changes to production in a quick way? Of course, so developers test it and see what's happening and react on user feedback and all other stuff. But I guess everyone knows it anyway. So we have a new project starting. You're a DevOps engineer responsible for automating it, and hey, let's build a delivery pipeline, right? So you go to your favorite website, to Xebia Labs, periodic table of DevOps tools, which is in your bookmarks, and select what tools are you going to use today for your next DevOps pipeline. So we've picked Gradle, Git, of course, Jenkins, Artifactory, Ansible for deployment, some other stuff. So it's really interesting, and you're eager to start the project. So you're envisioning more or less traditional Jenkins pipelines you're about to build, starting with git checkout, doing Gradle build, integration test, publish to Nexus, which is not Nexus but Artifactory, sorry. Deployment, functional test, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of nice steps, which would be nicely visualized with the Jenkins plugin. It would be visible to managers and all development teams and so on. And you also think through the deployment procedure. So, for example, in this case, it would be a Java application, but of course it could be something different. So you of course prepare a package, you generate an SSH certificate, make sure that Jenkins agent can deploy seamlessly to an environment, for example. You provision Linux, install some dependencies via apt-get, download artifact with curl, start the app using systemd or serviced, and then you think, oh, but I should actually consider Docker for immutable infrastructure. And so I should spend a little bit time on this project in order to improve, right? And there are still some points to clarify. For example, whether it's round-robin or hash-based clustering, how do we deal with blue-green deployment strategies on production, and actually, should we use Kubernetes, or we will be a little bit conservative and use Docker Swarm? Right. But then manager comes and says that we're going to use Windows servers. So anyone had this situation? No?
Not the situation, but the software that works only on Windows.
Yes. All right. So everyone is really lucky. So I had this situation in a mild version of it. So you kind of feel that all of your dreams are ruined, and you can stop thinking about Docker. So it's not a runner. But hey, we're professionals, right? We're paid money not to entertain ourselves and learn fancy technologies. We're paid money to make business works and solutions working. So let's deal with it. And so our mission impossible. We have to install Java application on Windows in a DevOps way with all DevOps practices. We cannot spend any money on licenses, right? We should automate using familiar tools because otherwise we'll waste a lot of time installing Visual Studio and learning C# or anything like that. So you have a Mac, okay? and if you I can tell you one story. So Macs are very expensive, but if you buy a large hard drive, it's more expensive. So you don't usually buy a large hard drive. But if you have a Vagrant box with Windows, it usually takes like 40 gigabytes. So sometimes it's not possible. And we have to stop thinking about Docker all the time in this project, right? So just focus on the task. So yeah, we can do it. So step number 1. So you're a Mac user. Where do you get a Windows VM? Any options? Microsoft. On Microsoft what? On Microsoft what? Torrent? They provide free machines? Like a virtual machine? But where do you install it? In the cloud. Which cloud? Azure? No, in Google Cloud Platform. Because it's less expensive than Azure for some reason. So Google Cloud Windows VMs are less expensive than Azure. Maybe I'm wrong actually, but I have to double check. So okay, so a smallish tutorial. So you log in, you create compute instance, you pick a Windows Server R2, whatever it means. Then you create your Windows account, so it gives you a password. And then the first surprise, remote desktop. It's actually available both on Mac OS and Linux. So you could actually connect to RDP using either Chrome Remote Desktop plugin, or you could go to Apple App Store and download a remote desktop app, and it works, and it's free. Wow. So that was my first surprise. Okay, so we have our Windows virtual machine on Google Cloud, and we have already envisioned our way how do we deal with the typical deployment pipelines, and we would need the following tools: Ansible, SSH, apt, get, systemd, Docker, and few others. So let's go one by one. So Ansible. Who knows Ansible? Too few, yeah, 20%. So we'll learn Ansible in 1 minute. So imagine you have bash scripts. So Ansible is like a bash script, but so it works using SSH and Python. But instead of writing, instead of writing shell scripts, you write in a language called YAML, which is similar to XML. And the core concepts are tasks, what to do, playbook, aggregations of tasks. There are roles as well, and inventory files where to connect, and lots of configs modules and plugins. But think of Ansible as a collection of utilities and modules which automate a lot of routine tasks which you would need to spend a lot of time to solve if you're using plain bash. And actually, if you dig through the documentation of Ansible, you find an interesting page called Windows Modules. And this page claims that there's over 20 or 30 modules for support of Windows. And of course, they're not interoperable with the Linux modules, but anyways, quite a lot of them. So I've got intrigued. I've read documentations. I found that, okay, I might need WinFile, WinCopy, WinService, WinURI, WinGet. So these are all interesting sounding modules. And that's an example from Ansible script on how to invoke one task. So using this code block, I create a directory, C app logs, and say state directory. And it usually works. So in order to run Ansible script from Mac and connect to a Windows machine, the documentation states that I need to install some dependencies. So in addition to installing Ansible, I need to install a Python module called pywinrm. rm probably for rm command. So again, I got interested. I've Googled and I found that actually RM stands for Windows Remote Management Protocol, and it's something based on SOAP, but it exists. And it's firewall friendly, which means that it works based on HTTP. Okay, so if we follow the tutorial, we should be able to connect from Mac to Windows machine using Ansible scripting tool. Now, how do we actually connect? Where's my SSH? Because I don't think that Ansible would use a remote desktop and move my mouse. So, tada, meet PowerShell. Who haven't used PowerShell? One. Come on, I lived 10 years, I haven't known that there's PowerShell in Windows. Okay, PowerShell. So PowerShell is like Bash prompt, right? So if I try to compare PowerShell to Bash, I have different analogies, but maybe something like this, okay? So my first task to write my script is to download my Java application from Artifactory. Okay, I know my URL. I would usually do it like this. And actually, in PowerShell, you also have a similarly looking command. It's just you have to type twice as much. So you could see that people who invented Linux and contributing core utilities are really about efficiency and less typing, and in Windows it's about beauty of code. I don't know. So yeah, so actually getting curl on PowerShell is not a problem. So you could emulate different types of requests, even form encoding for logging in to Artifactory. And there's a lot of documentation and a lot of other utility methods as well. So invoke web request isn't the only one. Now, but I have to connect remotely, right? So I need to do SSH user add IP. And actually, PowerShell has remoting. Who didn't know that? Okay, everyone knew that, right? But they do have remoting. In order to do that, you have to enable it first with force flag. I don't know why. And then if you type enter PS session, computer name credential user, it's the same as this. Again, there's substantial difference in number of letters you have to type. So if you do it, you would see a prompt to enter your Windows password, and if you do it, you're logged in. All fine. So there's a small trick you have to do to enable Ansible. So there's a special configure remoting for Ansible PowerShell script you have to execute on a target machine, because it does something with certificates and so on, because if you don't use a proper signed certificate, then this thing generates it and registers and does some other magic. Without running the script, it wouldn't work. Then on Google Cloud, you would have to add a firewall rule on a default port 5986 TCP protocol, and success. Our Ansible tool can finally connect to a Windows server deployed on Google Cloud. Okay, what else? Actually, there's a PowerShell on macOS. Who knew that? Aha. The reason for that is that .NET guys had a serious change in their plans recently. .NET is now cross-platform, and it works on macOS and Linux, and it's called .NET Core. And macOS 10.12 supports .NET Core, and therefore it supports PowerShell console. So you could open PowerShell and connect to Windows and do all the stuff there. And it's free. Okay, so we have our PowerShell. Now apt-get. So it's like we're comparing this versus add-remove programs. But no, actually Windows claims to have a package manager, which is called Chocolati. Who have used that? Yay. So the concept is absolutely the same as in Homebrew for Mac or apt-get for Linux or Yum. So you have packages, you install them, update them, remove them, and so on. So these are top 3 downloaded packages from internet, and the number 3 package installed on Microsoft Windows is Java. First is Flash. So in order to install Chocolati, the first thing to do is you have to enable scripting on your machine, because it turns out that by default PowerShell scripting is not allowed for security reasons for users. So you have to enable it first. This is a bit surprising for Linux users, but that's how it is. Then you download a nice installer package, it does all the things, and then you make this command, choco install JDK 8, install dir/c Java 8, and you have Java. It's free, but there's a paid version of Chocolati as well. And comments on the component kind of site said that, oh, you can't have this parameter here, but if you buy Chocolati for enterprise, then this parameter becomes configurable. Okay, but okay, basic stuff, it's fine. You could install all the stuff you want. So Chocolati has Ansible support. You have a special task called win Chocolati. You type in a package name, say that you want it to be present on this machine, and pass additional params, and it works seamlessly and integrates with the package manager. All right, done. Now systemd. Now that's gonna be hard. So we're comparing systemd or serviced with control panel services, right? So what would be the alternative to doing it manually? So there's an enterprise tool called non-sucking service manager. So the documentation states that it's a service helper which doesn't suck. Based on documentation screenshots, I came to a conclusion that it was developed for running Unreal Tournament server. But it also helps to solve enterprise problems because it has Ansible support. So there's a win NSSM task which you configure that this is my daemon, which is Java, Windows edition. Its start mode is manual, state started, std out here, std error there, and some app parameters in order to execute jar file. And it works. And I spent quite some time, and NSSM is the best tool out there for doing this task in open source world, and it's free. Demo time. Okay, to prove that I'm actually not lying, I'm going to connect to internet. Okay, so if I run deploy script, so now I have connected using WinRM. I'm installing non-sucking service manager. Then I'm installing Java. Uploading application jar. I'm removing previous version of application server and stopping it because it's redeployment. Registering Windows Server, setting application path, replacing jar with the updated one, starting Windows application, awaiting and triggering URL to wait until it returns HTTP OK. So I'm waiting until it's up and running, and it's almost there. Well, yeah. So Java takes a bit of time to start on. Yeah, okay. So that's it. I can actually show you a little bit of code as well, just so you get a feeling of Ansible support for Windows. I don't know why I have turned off IntelliJ. And sorry, here's my password. Yeah. So here's how the main script looks like. So Ansible script consists of this win underscore task things, and it's fairly simple, and it works, and it was set up for a Jenkins pipeline for some time. It was redeploying, 20 times a day, and it never failed. Okay, so that was a smallish demo. You can ask me. Oh, yeah. Next, applause. Yeah. So our mission is complete. Delivery pipeline for Windows is installed. I can keep using my MacBook for now. Docker. All right. Still, we have some dreams, and I've heard on some conference that Docker is now supported on Windows. Well, not really. Docker Hub, that's official page from Docker Hub. It says that there's a Windows Server Core container image for container available, and I could pull it, Docker pull. Hey. And so there's a nice comparison I found about sizes of Linux images. So I would prefer Alpine because BusyBox sounds a little bit too extreme. So I was wondering, what's the size of a Windows-based image? Ooh. 10 gigabytes. Microservices, nice. Yeah, so it's about 9 to 10 gigabytes base image.
But you can use also Linux images.
Yes, that's true. Nice to know. You can install Docker on Windows. You could run Linux images on Windows in Docker. But what you cannot do is to run Windows and Linux containers at the same time, because these are different engines, and at the moment they are not integrated together. So our idea was, okay, we have these clusters, we have some Windows machines and Linux machines, and it all works together. No, it's not possible at the moment. So Windows machines, Windows container should be kept separately, Linux containers should be kept separately. So yeah, it didn't work. So there are still some problems with Docker, and Docker support on Windows is quite new. So it was released to production only last September. I mean, a year before. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it on production. So what have we learned today? Firstly, is that it seems that regardless of operating system choice, the same tools, patterns, and practices apply. So you could still use Ansible, you could still use your Mac, you could still use the same logic of organizing your pipeline. So, which means that if you as a DevOps engineer go from Linux to Windows, your knowledge is still quite appreciated. Another thing which surprised me is that recent statistics from GitHub telling about organizations with the most open source contributors. And who do you think is on place number 1? Yes, it's Microsoft. So that's scary. And then I found this picture. So that's Microsoft CEO showing a slide that it's Microsoft loves Linux. Furthermore, I've spoken to some guys from Microsoft, and they are saying to me that they all run Linux. So something is changing in this world, right? So that's my slide. I think that Microsoft loves DevOps, sort of. So they're moving into this direction, and things which were unthinkable 5 years ago and impossible 2 years ago are possible now. And who knows, maybe in 2 years we'll have Docker production on Windows. All the code is available. That's it. Thank you.
And we're a bit ahead of our time, so do we have questions right now? Go ahead.
This pipeline you described,
Yes.
is it actually being used in production?
Well, it's being used for development. I mean, for development server, test server, and for production. Our solution was to assemble MSI packages. So then you don't use it so Jenkins doesn't install on production. It gives you an MSI package which you copy on USB and go to the bank to plug it in.
Any more?
Have you tried to use Windows containers in Azure? They have now that feature.
No, I haven't.
As I understand, this is quite good working for Java. Have you heard of that it's used for .NET?
Use what?
No, for .NET applications where it's installing the IIS enabling and configuring it and running.
You mean Ansible?
whole infrastructure.
Well, there's a combination of tools, and some of them are referenced from Microsoft websites, some of them aren't, and it's hard to say what .NET people are using. I know that .NET people would be using Jenkins because, but yeah, all right. Yeah, I think that this principle about development testing environments and automatic deployments is quite standard, and it's not bound to any specific implementation technology. So even PHP guys, they would have the same phases roughly, some static analysis phase, deployment phase, and compilation phase. I mean, for compiling, JavaScript to optimize JavaScript. So these phases are quite similar everywhere. At least that's my view. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for more. Anyone?
So you said that at the end you pack it up in MSI. How do you test it? Do you have a pipeline for that?
We didn't do it yet, but there's a headless install possible for MSI as well. So I've been trying it and it works. So when you build your installer package, just to make sure that you have -- headless install, and then you automate it.
Yeah. Well, shouldn't you test that on your side first? The
Yes.
deployment of MSI.
Yes, that's true. That's a discussion we've actually had, but in that project it didn't come to that yet. But my recommendation would be on dev environment or on test environment, you could quickly deploy artifacts, but on stage environment, where stability is more important than speed of delivery, then you would need to reproduce MSI installations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, time for a couple more. Nobody? Oh, okay.
On the first slide, you said that you're proposing consultancy for different stuff, like replacing some custom solution by standard one. Did you propose your consultancy to Medusa?
Yeah, I don't think that they have enough money. Sorry.
My question is why I have chosen Ansible for this task, because Chef have a client which natively supports Windows, Runbooks like Rundeck supports WinRM, so everything is field tested, and you are using Ansible, which requires some kind of Linux box. So your customer is not running just only Windows.
Yes. So the customer isn't running Windows only. It's a mixed environment. And at that time, Jenkins was on Linux. And we actually knew that some customers prefer Windows, some product users prefer Windows, some prefer Linux. So you have to deal with both, sort of. And I know that Puppet, Chef, and Ansible are pretty much on the same level. So it's a matter of taste and experience, except that Ansible is, from my point of view, a little bit less complex because it's stateless. It works like a script, hit and run. Whether with Puppet and Chef, you have to set up agents and stuff like that. So Ansible is... So I usually use Ansible for installs, and Puppet is mostly used for infrastructure, cluster monitoring and installation of, network interfaces and all of the infrastructure as code stuff. So that's where I would recommend Puppet, for example. But when you have to do some quick administrative actions, then Puppet and Chef might be a little bit hard to set up. I would say. Unless it's already there and you could connect, but it wasn't the case. Yeah.
All right, one more, at least.
How is PowerShell on Mac? I remember that there was issue with the service.
Yes. Yeah, actually, it doesn't work. Because I have a previous version of Mac OS, and I have installed some old beta version because I didn't want to install new Mac OS version yesterday, because that would be a huge risk of me not coming today. And yeah, my connection didn't work. But I assume that's because I am using an outdated PowerShell. But at least it starts, and I could run local commands like so the invoke web request does work, and as well as many other commands. So that's PowerShell. But I couldn't connect to remote machine.
Yeah, I'm most interested in did you use this, for example, PowerShell on Mac in your day-to-day activities?
I have to show one slide.
Really interesting when some guys will start to use PowerShell on Linux.
Okay. No, maybe there's some value in it, because yeah. So Bash has everything, but everything is I don't know. No, Bash is cool. No, sorry.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, last one.
Maybe not questions, side note. Do you know that in Windows there is Bash recently? It's on in Windows 10 and Windows 7
yes,
also.
I've used Cygwin years ago. What, not Bash? Okay, nice. So I can connect to Windows with PowerShell to start Bash. Yes.
In Docker.
Okay, so that's it.
Okay, thank you, Dmitry. Okay, well, Dmitry prepares to have his present from us. One quick question. Do we have the one volunteer for our DevOps karaoke? Who's the one? You'll get, also, if you participate in karaoke, you'll get one of these. Dead serious, you'll get it. You come here, stand for 5 minutes and present from random slides, you get it.
Present from random slides?
Yes. Sorry? About whatever's on that slides, it's karaoke. No, not everybody can sing well at karaoke, so that's the whole point. It's fun. It's fun.
Can speakers apply?
Why not?
I don't know. Now people are bored with me.
Whatever floats. Okay. Thank you.
Oh.
Here's your.
Thank you.